We're now going through this period of great change in the world. And as we know, we've learned a lot today about how there's been challenges, there's controversy, there's new opinions are being formed. But the one resounding message that I'm taking out from this is that there's a real need for brands to connect with an authentic tone of voice. And this is something that we can now go on to where we talk to Zoë Chowney. And Zoë is the founder and CEO of Bacano.io. And she's going to be talking us through her journey as a transgender technology entrepreneur and what businesses can do to create happier, healthier, and more productive workforces. So I'd like to welcome Zoë Chowney. Thank you.
Hi there. Good afternoon. First, I'd like to thank MadFest for inviting me to speak today about my experiences as a transgender entrepreneur and also what businesses can do to try and better support the LGBTQ+ community. A brief overview of my professional background. I'm an accountant and a tech entrepreneur. I used to work many years ago for AIG in an international role, mainly in Latin America and the Caribbean, which was utterly awesome. Returned to the UK in 1999. I guess I'm showing my age now. Probably half of you weren't even born by then. And I founded a number of different internet ventures, including the co-founding of a digital media agency, which I then went on to sell to Ogilvy, where I completed a 4-year earn-out. Later, I became European CEO for Kenshu. I'm sure most people here know about Kenshu and their awesome technology. I left that after a while and founded another tech company that we developed some very innovative technology to assist asset finance and leasing industry. And more recently, I set up an R&D, research and development tax consultancy. And today I've actually just beta launched Bacano.io, which provides an R&D tax claim SaaS platform, offering by far the lowest fees in the industry. So that's kind of me professionally. Regarding my gender dysphoria, this is something that I have battled with since very, very early childhood. Actually, my earliest memory at the age of 3, I remember thinking, something has gone horribly wrong here. My body and brain clearly are not in any kind of alignment. However, unfortunately, the world was a very different place back then. I'm talking late 70s, early 80s. So my situation, it never got talked about, never got addressed. My parents found out once. And instead of it being discussed and dealt with and talked about, it was just suppressed. I was just told that this is wrong. I became thoroughly embarrassed and totally ashamed of who I knew I was, and just trying to keep things suppressed, and ever since lived a secret double life. Battled with this my whole life. I figured that as I got older, that the gender dysphoria would become less intense and reduce, and therefore I could just maintain my life and keep things together. Unfortunately, as I found out, that's not how things work, and it gets more intense and more distressing as you get older. So much so, I got very sick in 2014. I was hospitalized a few times. The doctors actually told me that they thought I was going to die. They thought I had cancer, but they couldn't find it. They said, your body's kind of shutting down. I knew what the real problem was. It was the stress of my gender dysphoria coming out physically. It was totally consuming me by then. It was the first thing you would think of when you wake up in the morning, last thing you think of at night. It's on your mind the whole day. It's hard to focus on work and you become less productive. It was pretty terrible. So in desperation, I then confessed my real issue to my doctor. And this is the first person in my entire life I'd ever told, and I was 45 by then. Absolutely terrifying experience. Cut a long story short, I was sent to all sorts of specialists and the gender identity clinic at Charing Cross in London. And I ended up being given kind of an ultimatum. I had two choices. I had option one of staying in the closet and accepting that I would become clinically depressed and my body will continue to suffer and I'll get sicker and sicker. And if I don't actually kill myself, then my body will just probably shut down anyway. Either way, they predicted an early demise. Or was given the option of transitioning, which obviously was going to be incredibly hard. But they say, look, hopefully after a few years of difficulty, you should come out the other side and life will get better. So it really was caught between rock and a hard place. But I decided to transition. So having kept this a total secret from everybody in my life for forever, basically, I finally became the real me full-time in March 2017. So I'm 3.5 years old now. As well as facing major upheaval in my personal life. It was terrifying, actually depressing, to realize that I've gone from being part of probably the most privileged demographic, a white straight male, to one of the most marginalized and discriminated groups possible. The whole experience was terrifying. I can tell you this, that no trans person, excuse me, will ever forget the terror and nervousness of meeting work colleagues and business contacts for the first time in their new gender. Many people think that or feel that LGBTQ plus equality is no longer an issue because the world has moved on. And in the Western world, it pretty much has, even though being gay in many countries is still illegal and in a number of countries still actually carries the death penalty. However, there's still a long, long way to go, particularly for the transgender community. The world seems to be very slow at catching up with that. There's lots of recent reports, transgender reports at the moment that have been released by people like Stonewall. Some of the stats, I mean, I could go on all day with the statistics. I'll just give you a few. 41% of transgender people, these are all UK stats, were victims of a hate crime within the last 12 months. In the workplace, 1 in 8 transgender people have been physically attacked by colleagues or customers during the last 12 months. 51% hide their identity at work because they're afraid of discrimination. Only 3% of companies have equal opportunities policies that openly welcomes transgender people to apply for jobs. Only 2% of employers offer a transitioning at work policy to support staff to go through a gender transition. There are lots of industries. The stats differ by industry. I would have thought IT would have been one of the more accepting and diverse sectors. Unfortunately, it's not. It's one of the worst. And a recent poll shows that 45% of IT companies questioned stated that they were unlikely to ever consider employing a transgendered person, which is still pretty horrendously shocking. And another wider statistic shows that 62% of LGBT graduates that come out at university go straight back in the closet when they enter the workplace and take their first job. So it still shows that there's an awful lot of issues that need to be addressed, particularly within the workplace. One of the main challenges facing trans people is the fact that there's no hiding. Unlike being gay, trans people don't have the luxury of choosing when and how and who to come out to. If you're gay, you choose whether you want people to know this or not. But when you're a transgender, particularly in your early days of transition, when you have to go to the workplace, as much as I try to blend in, to look as normal and female as I can, in the early days of transition particularly, it is much, much harder. And you're constantly having to have the conversation about being transgender. And there's no getting away from it. It's totally exhausting. So what is it that transgender people want? Mainly it's just to be accepted and treated the same as they were before. I mean, I'm the same idiot now as I was before, but I'm now just an idiot in a dress. Unfortunately, this doesn't always happen. When I transitioned, when I became me back in March, I was running those two businesses. So that my leasing tech company, although my staff were absolutely fine and accepting, unfortunately, my business partner wasn't and refused to ever see me again in person. So I actually had to leave that business, even though I'm still, I believe, a shareholder in that company. With my R&D consultancy, I had the challenge of telling all of my 35 clients over the course of a week that they're now going to be getting emails from Zoe rather than the person they were getting it from previously. An exhausting process, but it was extremely positive and 100% support from all of my clients, which is great. So what can you do to help support the community? I mean, companies can make a huge difference, mainly by being visibly accepting. Accepting diversity is not just the right thing to do for business, it's also good for business. There are many studies that you can find online that show that diverse workforces are more innovative, faster at solving problems, and ultimately more profitable. Large companies tend to get it, and many of them have well-publicized D&I, diversity and inclusivity policies and internal networks. However, many of those are still struggling to really understand how best to support trans folk. However, the vast majority of SMEs show no visible support at all. And this is a big problem because SMEs employ 60% of the UK workforce. So in addition to my day jobs, I also have a number of gay jobs. One of those is being founder and co-chair of prideinbusiness.org. Now, Pride in Business provides free support and resources to SME businesses to enable them to be visibly more welcoming and supportive to the LGBT community. They basically, participating businesses agree to adopt and uphold a simple 4-point code of conduct to support the community. And they also get to put the Pride in Business branding on their website that shows staff, potential staff, customers, suppliers, etc. It shows that they're supportive of the community. So it's hoped that this will encourage more people to be confident and to feel less need to actually hide who they are. So if anybody's interested in looking at that, please feel free to visit prideinbusiness.org and you can get involved. I also run sessions and workshops for larger companies to help them better understand specific challenges for transgender people in the workplace. If anybody wants to get in touch with me, please feel free to scan the QR code that you can see on my background and you can get in touch that way. Now, if I didn't have personal experience of being transgender, I know that I'd have hundreds, if not thousands, of questions, most of which I wouldn't dare ask out of fear of being inappropriate or causing offence. However, I'm very open about my situation and I want people to better understand and accept. And I believe that this only happens if they have their questions answered. Therefore, with that in mind, please don't have any questions.
Hello, Zoe. Thank you very much for that. Both you and I have chosen to be women in leadership roles. And in fact, we both did similar jobs at Neo. I just left there a few years after you. But still, having had the experiences that you've had and now, you're a serial entrepreneur, you've lived a mythological life in a sense because of your, having to feel uncomfortable with who you were for so long. And congratulations on realising your true self. I think that's incredibly, admire you enormously, and it's extremely inspirational, I'm sure, for people who are listening today. But I just want to ask you one question, and that is because that's all we've got time for, I'm afraid. In terms of your previous life and your interaction with women in, in work and in leadership roles. Have you got any comments or any kind of feedback you'd like to share with us about how that has evolved at all over the last 20 or so years?
I don't know. I mean, I find my relationship now, business-wise, people treat me the same as they did previously, which is good. I haven't, to be honest, noticed any significant challenge from a business point of view of being seen as female. So that's good. Is that kind of what you were referring to?
Well, I think it's just you've got a unique lens, haven't you? Because you've been, you were accepted as in appearance, you looked like a man and you acted like a man and you were in a leadership role. And now you are yourself and you're a woman and that's that's how you identify and you're comfortable with that, which I think is amazing. But what I'm asking you, I suppose, is to kind of like in that journey, you were obviously working with women. Do you feel that they were, was there a difference between the way you were treated when you were, when you were a man and you presented as a man rather, and how your female colleagues were treated?
I don't think so. I mean, I had quite a few senior women working for me. I was working with quite a few that weren't working for me, just peers. And to be honest with you, I guess at the time I never gave it that much thought, which is probably bad. Maybe I should have done more. I didn't notice any particular challenges that those women faced, and it was never made. I was never made aware of any. That doesn't mean to say that there weren't any.
Sure.
And maybe I should have been maybe a little bit more observant to understand a little bit more.
Well, thank you so much for your honesty and your openness, and I'm sure that many people watching this afternoon will be getting in touch. Thank you so much, Zoe. Good luck.